Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. It's pretty exciting to be here. One of the things that was thinking of doing is maybe just touching on my background first, give you a little idea of how I got started in security. It's actually a while back ago. It started out when I was in high school, actually. My uncle had a new company, and he asked me to help him out on the weekend. So I would go to the office on the weekend and solder chips to a board. Um, it was just something very easy to do. Left me in a room, and that's all I did. And he asked me to do as many as I can. It just got really boring. I didn't have anybody ask questions about it. I didn't see the end result of it, and I didn't know what was going on other than, put this here, solder, use a soldering iron, and then here's how you test to make sure that it's connected. Other than that, that was it. It got boring really fast. It wasn't until my other uncle started coming around because he needed to help build out the network. The company was growing and they needed more employees, and they wanted to make sure that they have a decent network set up. So this is back in the time when ThickNet was very popular as a network setup. And the reason why I enjoyed it is because I actually was working alongside my other uncle and just gave him all kinds of questions. I also had the chance to set up or replace their phone system too, and that was even more fun. So, getting a chance to build out that network, see it working at the end, or even the phone system and seeing it working was pretty cool. And asking all the right questions about it was an interesting opportunity to learn more about that life. Everything that he told me, everything that he trained me on, I trusted that what he said was accurate because the end result was something was working. And so I realized that he would never steer me wrong. However, my other uncle that actually owned that company had a really bad experience with his investors. And they just took over the company. He lost the company, it took him to court, eventually won. But then I recognized that there's another side of trust that I wasn't too happy about. And that is people that are supposed to be helping you out, you should trust them, but they ended up doing some pretty bad things. And so that part just left me with the impression that technology is not where I want to be at. I want to do something different. So I decided after high school that I go in and join the Marines, and that's what I did. There's a common thing about trust that I learned in there, and that is that you can trust the people closest to you, the person on your right, the person on your left. They're supposed to have your back. Those are the people that you need to rely on, and they are relying on you. People in front of you, people that you don't know, those are the folks that you have to question and understand what it is that they're doing. What is their intention? And this is during a time of an incident. So that's kind of the lesson learned that I received, and I carry that throughout my career. And that is that those that are closest to me, like family, friends, peers, I trust them. The people that I don't know, people that are trying to sell me something, or somebody telling me that that's something bad, or somebody doing something that I don't know about, I question it, and I try to understand what's going on before I make my decision on whether or not I should fully trust them, or if I should ask more questions or understand it better before I decide what to do next. So anyhow, after the Marines, I decided to go back into the workforce. I landed a job working for an HR team and eventually became the IT person of the HR IT. And the reason why I did that is because, I gravitated towards technology side stuff, the technical stuff. And people liked how I managed it. I was very fast at it. And that is something that they felt that they can rely on me as the go-to person because the other person that they reached out to was not as available. And so they trusted the work that I do, and they trust that I know how to do my job. Um, so eventually I landed into IT teams, managing different teams over the course of the next 6, 7 years. And eventually I landed a job that headed towards my role in security. And I'll touch more about that later down in my keynote because I have a pretty big story to share about that. It's around security. Anyhow, during that time as a security person, I've also attended many conferences. I had the opportunity to speak at some and listen to many like-minded security professionals and learning from them. So I understand what it's like to be in front of somebody and talk to them and bumping into others. And I really wish we could have gathered together in person at ROOTCON. I not only have family in the Philippines, I also have a nonprofit program that helps out local orphanage and also children that don't have a home. And so I contribute quite a bit over to the Philippines, not just the family, but others as well. But I know firsthand what an amazing country it is, and it's mostly because of the culture and the people. Now, granted, I love the food there, and I really miss it. I do have some home cooked meal, but there's something different about having it in the Philippines as well. Um, and I know how electric it can be at the conference like this, just to be surrounded with so many passionate and talented folks from around the world, all immersed in information security, security research, technology, collaborating with one each other, and of course, sharing really interesting researches or techniques and so much more. There are connections and great ideas that can only take place from the serendipity of bumping into somebody else. But 2020 had other plans, as most of us know, and we've all had to adjust to meet this curveball we've been dealt. My hat's off over to the conference organizers for pulling this off in such a compelling way and being very creative with the limited resources at hand. In the past few months of this strange COVID experiment, we've all had so many common experiences. In a way, we have all been brought together and facing a common threat. Hmm. The experience of saying that famous phrase in some of these meetings are "you're on mute." Um, Unmute yourself. So that happens quite a bit. It happens almost on a daily basis, and we also most likely share some other common awkward experiences too, like when a meeting ends. Some of us wave goodbye, and others are nodding their head, and then there are those that are muted and they say goodbye, and then people are like, "Oh wait, so and so is saying something." When they unmute themselves, they say, "Oh, I'm just really saying goodbye." So it's a pretty awkward moment, and I'm sure some of you experience the same thing. But another one that happens often is the host leaving a good conversation, and this actually happened to me today. We were in another meeting talking about the approach that we take on data analytics. And so the host said, I have to run to another meeting because they got called into it. And instead of handing off the host to one of the other participants, because there were six of us in there, he ended the meeting for all, and we all got kicked out. And then we all had to get on chat and say, do we want to continue the meeting? Yes, who's going to host it? And then finally we got back in to finish the meeting. So, those are some of the things that I've experienced. And it's fun because whenever somebody comes and talk to me about some of their experience, that's one of the things that come up often. But of course, there's other something that we all experience together, and that is, of course, COVID. COVID has pushed many companies to rethink how they manage security just in general. And so I got to say, if you haven't seen it so far or haven't realized it, but I'm pretty happy and very proud to work at Zoom. And we pride ourselves on delivering happiness to our customers. And really might sound cheesy, but think how much services like Zoom have brought the world together and helped us to stay connected in this challenging year. It's true, Zoom may have forever killed the snow day in colder parts of the world, but it has allowed kids to keep learning, allowed companies to keep moving forward, and allowed people to still make face-to-face connections, even when we had to stay physically apart from one another. So we've been on quite a roller coaster in keeping up with demand. Our daily users ballooned to more than 300 daily participants just in April. And that's from a previous maximum total of 10 million participants in December. Zoom drew 52% of Google's searches for video conferencing between February and April. So we're here in what you have called recovery mode. And I know we are going to maximize this opportunity because there may be something fitting about us gathering virtually. So what are the real challenges? A quote that Stefan Napa said is, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and a few minutes of a cyber incident to ruin it. And so the challenges in working, or the real challenges of safeguarding data in the virtual world of work is, well, not only can we stay comfortable at home, we're also reminded of how important these issues of information security are, now more than ever. Companies did years worth of digital transformation in a matter of weeks. The world went virtual overnight in March, and for many people and organizations, there will truly be no going back. The pandemic has accelerated a lot of existing trends and it has showed us new ways of working, new ways of looking at the world, and a newfound appreciation of the tech infrastructure that keeps our society humming along. Now, I've been working in information security for the past 20 years, but there has probably never been a more exciting time than the last few months. Suddenly, executives and leaders are waking up like never before to the reality that this isn't something they can just tell IT to deal with it and never really think about it. It's more than just some back office function now. So this is a key strategic capability at every organization, and it's been said today that data is the new oil in terms of its importance to the global economy. When data is the most valuable asset a modern business holds, information security is what enables everything else that the company does. It's at the very root of every global multinational and every promising startup alike. The pandemic has upped the stakes. It has created fear and confusion, as well as chaos, very elements that bad guys thrive on. With more employees than ever working at home, we are seeing a true wild, wild west of phishing and malware attacks. Think of all the people adjusting to this strange new environment uh, and confronted with online scams for the first time. But the one thing that reminds me of a lot of this stuff, and it was actually brought up by my oldest. And the reason why it was brought up by my oldest is that my oldest celebrates a birthday, shares a birthday with a significant event in the world that everyone around the world revisits every year, and that's 9/11. A topic that we talk about in our household is how could we have not seen this early enough? Sometimes terrorist attacks like 9/11 are described as failures of imagination. It shouldn't take too much imagination to connect the dots. From today's password theft to full on infiltration of physical infrastructure connected by technology, like power grids or transit systems. And of course, some of the conversations we're having here today, connected vehicles is another example. We have information in our fingertips. Why were we not able to connect the dots? Now, this is already a looming specter before 2020. Now, for example, last year, the Identity Theft Resource Center found that 3.2 billion records, that's emails, passwords, maybe even some of mine and yours, were exposed in just 8 breaches in the first 6 months of the year. The pandemic has only accelerated this trend. Today, information security will and at the top should be a top budget priority for organizations throughout the fourth quarter of the year and into the foreseeable future. Last year, IBM found the average cost of a data breach globally was some 3 point almost $4 million. Think what enormous waste that is in money, in value, more importantly, in trust. We can change a lot of behavior in this time and relax many rules, but relaxing our expectations for security should not be included. I've been living and breathing this stuff for 2 decades now. And I've been doing it at a variety of companies facing any number of evolving threats. Now, some of those, going back to what I was sharing with you earlier, that got me into security. So I started out when I was leading all those IT teams, I was asked to manage a knock at another startup company, and they were providing a service in the cloud, or what were commonly back then referred to as an application service provider. And in that knock, one Sunday afternoon, I get a call from the team. And this team was just monitoring our entire production environment and taking calls from our support team. Support team called in and says one of the customers' default page has changed and it's not their standard page. So they went ahead and just restored from backup and it came back up. Then it changed again back to the default setting. And the default page was, FUCK, the US government. My team then called me and said, Randy, there's something going on with the customer site. And I said, did you restore from backup? They said, yes. And I go, okay, how many other customers are affected? And they said, 5 other customers. I told them to do a random check of, about 10% of 100, just pick up random sites and see what's going on with them, different clusters, different geolocation. They later called me back and said every single site was the same. So I started driving in, started making escalation calls to the executive teams. We created a war room in one of the conference room. And for 72 hours straight, I was in that room. Now, one of the things that I just shared with you is that I trusted the NOC team to do what they needed to do, but I didn't have a clear picture of what's going on. I trusted the individual that was calling me, and but I felt that I needed to confirm what the scope of this is. So asking them to do a check with the rest of the environment led me to realize that we were under attack and that we had to work quickly on that. And so we did, and we worked through it, and we finally remediated it. And it was because there was a vulnerability in Microsoft that allowed for the default and index.html to be changed. Once we figured out what that vulnerability was, and it was a vulnerability that's been around for a long time, Microsoft announced it for a very long time. We patched it, we restored it, and then in 72 hours, we were able to bring the company services back up online. But it came with a price. That price was our customers didn't trust us. We lost some customers. Other customers that we shared what we did to remediate it um, felt like they didn't have any other equivalent solution to go with, and so they stuck with us. Others felt that we did the right thing, and so they stayed with us. But again, there was a lot of customers that didn't trust us anymore after that event. So anyhow, that's one. Another one was that there was an investigation. These are experiences that I had that I want to share with you. Another experience that I had was we had an environment. We grew one of the companies I worked for, not Zoom. This is the many years ago. I'd say close to 15, no, 17 years ago. I worked at another company, and I got a call from one of our vendors. And the only reason why I got a call from the vendor is because I knew one of the founders. And he said, Randy, we got a strange support call. And the support call was from somebody that was in Southern California who wanted help on a server that they bought from somebody else. And I asked them, well, why are you calling me about it? That has nothing to do with us. And they said, well, that server shows that it was sold to you a couple of months ago. And so that raised an eyebrow. And so initiated an incident. We started looking into it. I couldn't trust the information that was available to me at the time, but we started in having the conversation with the person that acquired the server and then worked our way backwards. He said he bought it on eBay, and we asked for him to share any information that he can. So he sent us receipts and he sent us information. Two things came about. One was the eBay user, and when we did a search on the eBay user, it took us to a, uh, a, a end of the road. We couldn't go any past that. Actually, he had us three information. The second information was the PO box that they sent the check to. It was exactly that, a PO box, and we couldn't get any information on that. The price of the server was low, so we weren't too, we couldn't really report it to the police. The concern was we weren't sure what's on that device. Once we validated that it was a brand new device, never even touched our server, then customer data wasn't involved. But we're concerned about what else was sold. So as we did more research, we found that there's multiple servers that were being sold on eBay or sold on eBay. None of them we can pretend to acquire or purchase, but there was quite a few. The third thing that was provided was a telephone number. And by luck, I was sitting down next to somebody else that was sitting next to me, and we were trying to go through the number. And he says, "Wait a second, I recognize that number." It just so happened to be an employee of that company who that number belongs to. And once we sat down with that individual, we found out that he did that for a number of different devices. His reasonings were off, but we confirmed that there was no customer data on there. We were able to get him to pull all those servers back, and he had to pay for it. And any delta between what was missing from the payment of what he sold or what he sold versus what he made, he had to pay for it. But we got our servers back. And luckily, it wasn't that big of an issue. Unfortunately, that person happened to be my friend that I've known for many years. And so he lost that trust for me. And I couldn't believe he put us in that company in a bad situation like that. In any case, he went on to live his life. And unfortunately, I'm not a part of it as I used to. A third incident that goes around trust and what we need to do was that at another company we hired a vendor to help handle some customer support calls. Well, this company grew so fast that we offered a test account. And part of that test account, if they use the service, then they'll get billed on a monthly basis. If they stop using the service, then we'll just refund them the amount that was charged. And so, because the amount of usage of our service grew, so did the amount of support calls. And so we had to hire this third party in another country to assist us, and we gave them access to what we needed to. But during that period of time, somebody in our company decided we need to make it easier for us to be able to refund users, and let's go ahead and add a button that allows for them to do that. Well, this third party that was part of the support had access to refund that button, but he accidentally refunded a customer, several customers, multiple times. And you're only supposed to click it once and it refunds that total amount. But for some reason, if you keep clicking on it, it'll refund that same amount and it won't stop. It'll just keep refunding it. So this person at this support center, this third party support center, found out about that, used their own credit card to purchase the service, refunded it themselves, and then create a program that every few minutes or so, it would just click on that button to refund their account. The only reason why we found out about it was that there was an escalation made by our bank over to me, and they said, Randy, this is out of the norm. In this 1 month time, you spent X amount of dollars for this one account, and this we believe is part of your refund program. And we said yes. So when I looked at the number, I almost fell off my seat. So luckily, we were able to leverage that vendor to connect with their trusted friends in another country to be able to get us their investigative team, and then we finally found the two credit card holders that had it. We called the local police department. We confiscated everything that they have, and then the rest is history. So then that led us to not trusting vendors from that point on. That we had to put additional controls, and that they had to go through a lot to be able to have access to the same amount of tools and services that we offer to our regular employees. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that help drove my career in how I trust people in companies. And so it's an interesting experience. And I'm sure some of you have some other interesting experience, but feel free to reach out to me. I have a few more stories that I can share, and I hope to learn from you as well. So people think of this, of course, as highly technical work, but what I just described, some of them really isn't. But a lot of these lessons I've learned go way back to simple human nature. You can have the greatest tech skills in the world, but they don't, they won't be enough without the ability to work with people, the ability to lead teams, the ability to build trust. I look for all of those in spades when I'm hiring people to work with. Those technical chops are essential. How we communicate with each other, how we collaborate, and how we can build on others' trust in what we do is very important too. And trust is the right word. In fact, to describe the most important thing I've learned in my career, Ronald Reagan famously described his philosophy in negotiation as trust but verify. And that's pretty close to my attitude. In my career, this is common through excuse me, this is common through trusting each department from following policy, implementing the controls we need for them to have in place to reduce risk. We layer on that the weekly, monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually internal audits. We then bring in our third-party firms to validate some of this for us, and of course, leverage firms to identify other opportunities to improve by giving them the ability to report issues to us. The goal is to implement controls to reduce the likelihood of a successful compromise. And in this day and age, it's not a matter of if, but when, and not about prevention, but how quickly you can detect and remediate. Now, we've all grown so accustomed to, at this point, to stories about massive data breaches and leaks from leading companies. Mid-September, Staples is the latest household name to disclose a breach, exposing customer information. And we may remember the big ones like Adobe, October 2013, 153 million user records impacted. Equifax, another one, in 2017. about 148 million records. And we've all been on the side of the ledger as customers and individuals impacted. We've all gotten the notification. I got one as recently as last month. Your personal data may have been compromised. It doesn't even seem to affect some people anymore. They've resigned themselves from or to the inevitable. They increasingly don't view themselves as able to expect privacy in an online world today. That's not a promising sign because we should expect better and we should demand better. The future is something we create, not something we hope for. And all of you at this conference can play a critical role in that work of rebuilding trust. I have to say, I'm uh, I'm a big fan of this audience. You play an invaluable role in helping companies test the limits of their security posture and find ways to better safeguard the data of the people who trust them with some of the most sensitive information that they have. I'll keep returning to that simple idea of trust because I know that there are times when it might seem like you can't trust the companies you work with. Reality is that there are times when a company can't share a certain level of detail with you. And that isn't because we have something to hide, it's because we have to remain compliant with other commitments that we've made, like commitment to confidentiality. But let's face it, um, trust is hard to forge. It's even harder to rebuild when it's been compromised. There's a TED talk I love on this topic from a professor at Harvard Business School named Frances Frey. And she puts it, if we can learn to trust one another more, we can have unprecedented human progress. She calls trust the foundation for everything that we do. Frey has experience not just in academia, but on the front lines of a company that had to rebuild trust after a very public incident, which had alienated many customers with toxic reports about their company culture, how contractors were treated, and many other issues. But she helped them turn it around and learn strategies that correct the wobble and shakiness that happens when trust is lost. And her advice boiled down to this: leaders need to build organizations that are safe, welcome places where people feel free to show up as themselves. Organizations that lack that crucial cultural component find themselves wobbling like crazy. A funny thing happened as a result of the pandemic. Organizations suddenly found that with the need to move quickly and adjust on the fly, a lot of old ways of doing business fell by the wayside. Maybe your company stopped making you request sick days or log days off. They decided instead to just trust you. And some companies even began trusting their employees to not use their work devices for their personal use, actually trusting their teams. Imagine that. So, what can companies do to begin rebuilding and ensuring trust, both with their customers and with this community? I see a few key steps that I'm proud that I follow every company I go to. The first one is commit to transparency. It doesn't mean that we can reveal everything, but we can certainly do much more as organizations to make it clear the steps we're taking to safeguard information and why. Over communicate. I can't even say this enough. You gotta communicate. It's true that we all get too many emails today and we're overwhelmed by social media. That's all the more reason we need to find creative ways to break through all the noise, including engaging at events like this. Commit to excellence in service. Customers trust brands when they feel like they're being heard. That means we can't skimp on customer and tech support. Those are the people on the front lines when bad news breaks. And when it breaks, we're going to need a lot of people to help provide the information that our customer needs. And so there's going to be some catch up work for some customer support organizations. Now, I've learned firsthand about the need for trust. Early 2000, when I started on my career, as I mentioned that I got into that 72-hour event, um, you know, I, that event required us to actually shut down our services. And we shut down for 72 hours. Back then, it was an eternity, and let alone what it would be like today if we were shut down 72 hours. That would be insane. During that time, I saw a lot of people that were working with me on resolving the issues. I noticed that there were some people that left right at 5 to go home. They had that 9 to 5 mentality, even in the midst of a crisis, but not everyone. There was also that handful of people who stayed right there in the warm room. Sorry, the war room. It's pretty warm too. Who continued to search for issues to resolve it, to restore customer content. Um, I had a realization then, and I recognized that there were different types of people in that group working with us for that 72 hours. There was that one group that was there just from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. They were just there for work and only want to know what they can share to customers, and in some cases to the public. They were not troubleshooting or restoring services, but they wanted to be there to help. The other group was the ones that were not troubleshooting or restoring services. That second group wanted to be there to help remove roadblocks and inevitably anything else that popped up, like approvals or escalations. They wanted to do whatever it took to allow the other team to focus on what they needed to do, and that's troubleshooting and restoring. Then there's group three, the team that was actually doing the work and putting the work in to remediate the issue. After that experience, I knew right away the people I would trust to be with me when the chips were down. When I had to deal with the toughest issues, and those were the people in the second and third group, those were the people that I trust, that I can count on. Those were the people who understand that everyone has some role to play in assisting when a fast moving situation breaks. And those are the type of people gathered here today. So I hope we can all gather again together in person soon. But I know that in the meantime, we have a lot of work we can achieve together, working to build trust and build a more secure future. Thank you very much.